you said this, and this is so, oh my gosh, this is so key. You said that for most of us women, for all of us women, what we're really looking for is safety and security. Yeah. And then you said, which I really felt, is how sometimes we minimize our dreams and we minimize the things. And I think especially when the things come easily to us.
Oh, so, yes.
For example, like you said, when you're a natural, when it comes to, you're the person that all your friends come to for advice.
Yeah.
It's a very, like, if you were a nurse or something, where I had to go to school and I had to get a degree to do this, you probably have no problem charging for it. But it's these things where they come naturally to us. They're our natural gifting, but we don't see that word that you said, gold, professional, right? Mm-hmm. That if we put professional in front of things, what's the number one thing that you see women struggling with when it comes to creating that safety and security for themselves?
They haven't learned how to trust themselves. And life taught us early to be dependent on someone else in order to survive and be secure. And I think it's also really important to note here that that's a primal thing. That's a primal thing. It is literally encoded in our DNA in this species. And so we have to work with that, right? We can go and become, like G.I. Jane and, figure out I can protect myself. This is great. These pieces are important, but also we have this incredible gift of intuition, sisters, that is otherworldly. And that intuition has the ability to help us make sure we're in the right places at the right times I'm out of here. Right? Nope, not safe. This doesn't feel right. And to listen to that, it's something I'm teaching my daughter constantly, how to learn how to tap into that. My son as well, but he's 5 months. So, work in progress.
He's probably the most tapped in, right? He knows I'm hungry. I'm not happy. I'm like, he's like, I got this. The wish is my command.
So I think this trust piece, and the reality is, and I'm curious how many hands would raise here. No, that wasn't a conversation. That term, trust yourself, learning how to trust you, to trust the beat of your own heart, to trust the call of your soul, to trust your body. No, we were taught the opposite of that. And then these codependency patterns happen. And then we are in these professions where we get ourselves so entrapped, and also in relationships, we get ourselves so entrapped that the dependency there, it's terrifying to think about how we would extract ourselves out to be, independent in this way. And so I'm not even talking about the mechanics of getting your financials in order. However, that's extremely important. I remember being a person at a young age who just never was going to be dependent, financially on anybody else, and was always going to, and it's not like this indignant sort of like independent woman kind of thing. Like I got my own bag. Like, no, I'm in a marriage, and we are partners in everything that we do. And also I've always understood, life changes, and life is not, there are no guarantees in life, and except for me and me. And so this is the arrangement that our team has made in terms of my husband and I, in terms of how we do financials and all these pieces. And we hold each other accountable to those dynamics in our relationship. And that's really important. But even having that kind of a conversation, I have to trust myself. I have to trust my abilities. And here's the thing. It's hard to trust yourself when you haven't given yourself chances to build trust. So we have to take risks. We have to try things. We have to push ourselves. We have to set ourselves up sometimes to fail. And I use air quotes when I say that word, because it really is all just a test anyway. It's all an opportunity to receive feedback.
Yeah, the only way you can know, it's like with anything, the only way you can know something true, false is to do it, or to, and to build the evidence for yourself. And I love what you said as well about, sometimes we do something, it doesn't work out. And then we see, instead of just assigning the failure to the thing, I tried this and it didn't work. Okay, that means it's a different way. We internalize that,
right.
and we make it, I am a failure, versus that thing that I didn't work out. And what's the lesson that I can learn? Because in everything there's a lesson, right, to be learned, or a memory to have been created. And so we make that about, I am a failure. Money is a big one for us women. And I know that it's something that you teach about in your work. Tell me about your thoughts about women and our relationship with money.
I just think that it's an opportunity. I think that when you hear this, if you're like, oof, it's an uncomfortable place for me. I'm one of those people where if something feels uncomfortable, I'm like, okay, I'm first in line to go right towards it. And, I've learned along the way that living in fear of anything, of something that is challenging for me, is just going to continue to hold me in bondage to it. And so when it comes to money, it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to explore. It's an opportunity to do the deep excavation work required to look at your lineage and the relationship that money played in your family dynamic. And if it was really negative, thus you as an adult want to avoid it at all costs or feel terrified. I remember I used to feel deep anxiety, and I would have like a physical response when I would go to the mailbox and there'd be an envelope that said from the Internal Revenue Service on it. Because as a kid, my parents had some tax challenges, and I remember my mom coming in from the mailbox with the envelope, and then everything changing, like everything being really bad, and the stress being like, and I couldn't solve it as a kid. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't like make my parents happy, and because they were so stressed about what they were dealing with. And so when I became an entrepreneur, it was actually one of the deepest fears that I had, was like the tax thing. Like, I'm going to screw this up. It's going to go. And then I had this really interesting experience where I was working with an accountant, and the worst possible thing happened. He miscommunicated on something. I thought I was doing everything right. I was literally following every single step that he told me to follow, but there was a miscommunication, and we ended up owing $75,000 in taxes that I didn't have at that time. It was like, I remember sitting in the office and hearing him and like feeling my like sick to my stomach and having like full body panic grip me. And I just was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. And like just disassociating from my body because it was so stressful. And, long story short, we ended up having an amazing event and, did really well in sales at our event, and were able to pay that off by the grace. But, it was wild. And then we had this interesting experience. We decided to work with a different accounting team. And then this past year, they were like, we're going to file amendments to your taxes from 2018, 19, and 20. It was like back then. We're going to file amendments. And they ended up getting us back like all of it and more. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for the former version of me who worked through that, who like did that really hard inner work on herself, because she just paid me now because she did that then. Because essentially they gave us our money back, right? With the misfilings and the miss whatever. So that's just a small story. I wrote an entire book about it called Master Your Money Mind, about money mindset, and it brings you through exercises. And I think, we all have our own historical perspective. I know you have yours, Sandra. Like we all came from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And in a modern society, we don't get to avoid the money topic. And as entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are going to have our own companies, we don't get to avoid that. We get to do that work, and it can be extremely healing and beautiful. Because the other really fun story, one of my goals when I launched my business was to make a significant donation to an organization that supports survivors of sexual violence and domestic abuse. And I got to write a $10,000 check to Haven, New Hampshire, and be there with my daughter and with my husband and pass that check over on behalf of the little girl me. And I built this business that was able to do that. It's a really big deal.
I'll have your moment there. The little girl me.
Yeah.
Like that for what we can do is that oftentimes we get stuck because we're like, we feel like we can't let go, and yeah, as you said, there's a lesson to be learned. And then what do you do with that lesson instead of seeing that as, you could have seen that as defining you, right? I'm just whatever it is. Yeah. And you could have stayed stuck there, but you were able to do the work and then be able to make that donation on behalf of the little girl you. And what a powerful example and what a powerful story to share with your children, and especially your daughter, right?
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing to share. Now, we could talk forever. I want to talk about your books, because you have a couple of books that you've written. Tell me about the books, why you wrote them. I know you just mentioned one, but tell us about the books.
Yeah. So, Master Your Money Mind. And I just wrote that as like a guide because I really, really suffered and struggled with that. I mean, I looked back in a high school goal book that I had created, and one of the pages, the goal says to help my family out of the financial slump that we're in right now. And I was a senior in high school, and I was already thinking about that. And so I've done a ton of work around money mindset and healing that. And I wanted to just share what I've learned. And so I put that in that book. The next book that I wrote was called Quantum Wealth. And I co-wrote that with a woman named Adria Peters, who's an amazing author as well. And we wrote this book together in collaborative. It's inspirational. It's beautiful. There are 44 words in it, and it's kind of like a coffee table book, and you can just literally open it up, almost like even like a devotional or tarot or something, and open up to a word each day and read the passage and write about it. And it has a companion journal as well. And then the Book of Books was my poetry book, and it's called Paddle Home, Poems and Passages. And that book was the book that little Amber wanted to write. And I had thought, I started writing it, frankly, in 2014. And there's so many iterations that I've written, and they were all in longer form stories, and they were all in this like personal memoir sort of format. But I remember as I was writing through that I just didn't feel, I just didn't feel like it was relevant to tell the stories in that longer form. And as I continued writing these poems, they continued to write me, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and they became more universal. And then suddenly, I've become a poet, and that is astounding and not necessarily something that I thought I would ever be. But yeah, Paddle Home is just, it really is my whole heart in a book, through that, up to that point in my life, and a way of expressing. And what I've heard from readers is that, they put it on their nightstand, and it's one of those books that they just, wake up in the morning and they open up to something and they just receive it. And it's been a gift that they love to give to people. And that was always what I hoped it would be. I just wanted it to be a companion. I wanted it to help people feel witnessed and less alone. And it, I got to collaborate with two beautiful women, in my photographer, Lauren Bodwell, whose photos are featured in there. And then also, Cassandra Neese, the designer who designed the book cover to cover and put all of my vision for what I wanted it to be like, together. And so, yeah, it was a beautiful project, and, all of them are on Amazon. And it's just, I love that I have these things to share with people in the world.
Something else that you share with people in the world is you had a live event. And I know both you and I had our events impacted by the pandemic. So tell me about the live event. Is it something that you want to go back to, that you're going to bring back at some point?
Yeah. My answer to that is still a question mark. But in the interim, I do have an event happening in November, and it's called Ignite Your Business, and it's a live retreat. And I've always kept my retreats intimate to my Elevate Mastermind, but I'm actually opening this up for people to come and have a full retreat workshop experience with me. And I'm so excited. It kind of feels like putting my little toe back in the water of hosting a live event, and I've been hosting retreats all through the pandemic, frankly. I mean, I even had one in 2020 of September. I'm just like, I can't believe it. We did that, but we did. And I had a couple that I had to take virtual, but my mastermind, we were able to meet throughout. So that really filled that, need for me of like being with people. It's just so important to be together. So as far as the big event, the Ignite Your Soul Summit, I don't know. I still don't know. I haven't felt the tap, but I would say that I'm leaning more towards yes. Like I feel like I'm not actually the one who gets to answer the question. It's like there's like something speaking through me that's like, you're definitely doing it again. I'm like, I don't know about that. It's like this tug of war inside, but it's like, yeah, you are. So as you know, they're enormous undertakings. But they are, I mean, they're some of my most favorite memories in the world. And we had 500 women at our last one in 2019 and in New Hampshire, and it was just, it was so incredible. So, I never say never on that one, Sandra.
What's your biggest dream for yourself right now?
Oh, wow. I mean, maybe it sounds silly to say it like that. I feel like I'm living it right now. And I'd say my biggest dream is, to get to the end and feel like I just loved so big, like I use my heart to its fullest capacity in whatever way that I'm supposed to do that. But that's it. I just want people to understand how much they matter. And so I will do all that I can as one person to try to be that mirror and, to help people feel more compassion for themselves and to be kinder to themselves. Because I do think the answer to, actually, I was at the gas station the other day and this guy walked up to the woman next to me who was pumping and he said, I'm doing some research. I'm wondering if you can answer a question for me. And he said, what do you think? He was talking about the United States. He said, what do you think this country needs the most right now? And I was like, oh, what a great question. And her answer was a swift kick in the ass. And I laughed and I was like, that's such a New England thing for her to say, right? I live in New England. And I thought, well, what would my answer be if he comes over? And he ultimately didn't because they really got to talking. But my answer was love. And I looked all around, I looked all around at everybody there. I looked at the gas station with the advertisements for all the fast food and the alcohol and the cigarettes. And it's like, all of these things are coping mechanisms for a feeling that we're lacking inside of ourselves. And I just don't believe that many of us were taught how to love ourselves at all, how to love unconditionally. We weren't given love in unconditional ways. And I just think, and it's, I mean, I didn't either. I was so cruel to myself for so many years. And so I really understand what it's like to live in a place of like really being unloving to self and like what that pain feels like and how toxic it is in the body and what it looks like in relationships. And, I feel sad about the damage that caused in my life and the ways that I hurt other people when I was not able to love like that. But I also have so much grace and mercy and compassion for her because she was doing the best that she could. And so the answer to me always is just like, how can I be more compassionate with myself? How can I be softer with myself? How can I be more gentle with myself? And so I just can't sign up for things where it's like we're yelling at each other and we're like, I just don't think that's the answer. I think when my child is having a really hard time and she's getting really upset, she's angry, when I ask her what she needs and she says a hug, I think that's the answer.
We all just need a hug. Like really, it's funny that you say that because, well, it's not funny, but it's so true that you say we've not been taught. And I did, and for a lot of people, I'd love to encourage people to try this out, whether it works for everybody. But if you go on Google and you bring up the Google search bar and you type in, how do I learn to? Pretty much, I've tried this with a lot of people. The first thing that comes up, love myself.
Wow.
And I've been so struck by that, as I've been obviously on my journey of learning more about worthiness and really understanding that everything in your life, relationships, money, health, everything comes from self-love and self-worth. And it's heartbreaking that as humanity, we're literally turning to Google to learn how to love ourselves.
But I mean, nobody teaches you. And where do you learn that? I remember thinking early on in my coaching career, when I would meet different people, whether they were colleagues or coaches or mentors, I would ask them. And that's one of the reasons why I created my podcast, because I wanted to ask people that question. And I would ask them, how did you learn how to love yourself? Like, how did you learn how to be kind and compassionate to yourself? And I was asking for the audience, but I was asking for myself because I literally didn't know.
Yeah. What does worthiness mean to you?
I think that it is just innate. I think that worth, there's something that's better than worth, right? Like worthy to me is, it just has such a resonance of other, like getting to weigh in on it. And to me, it's just not a value that could ever be calculated. There's no metric for worthy. It is just so, we are expansive. This is an exercise I do with my clients all the time when they keep saying like, I want to charge what I'm worth. And I'll say, okay, so let me break this down for you. I'm just going to ask you this question. It's going to come across as really awkward, but I'm really serious about it. How much money do you want for your child? Like, just pick the one you like the most. I'm being silly, as you can see, but I'll say, which one do you like the most, and how much would you like for them? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? And I'm like, they get it, and I'm like, you can't. You can't charge what you're worth. That's impossible. You are invaluable. You are priceless. You are a miracle. Let's try to just get the edge of that. Let's just walk with that. I'm not asking you to get that today, but I'm asking you to just get the edge of feeling that. And then think about that silly question that I asked, and think about someone you love so much. Think about somebody that you've lost that's no longer here. And tell me what worth means to you.
And it's because, as you said, as you quoted the definition, is that so much of even how it's written in the dictionary is there's somebody, some arbiter who's assigning a value or saying this is what it's worth. And I think especially as well for us women, we somehow tie our self-worth to the work that we do or to doing, or, if I can
we'll
just
find any
more.
place to do it, Sandra. We will, any institution, we're so great at following rules.
Yeah.
Okay, our body weight, our dress size, our grades, our, the time we got on running the mile in gym class. It's like, we will try, this is what I'm saying. There's just no metric for it. And I think this is why we have to learn how to soften into ourselves. And I think the easiest way for me to do that is just to sit in awe of how much I love others. Like when I think of you, and I just like really let myself be fully present with the magnificence that is you. Right. And you can do the same for me. Right. So I'm saying that back. Right. Because I know that it's like, oh, that's a lot to receive. But also like, it's a very real thing. I do it with a woman at the grocery store who's checking out my groceries. I do this everywhere I go. I just feel the humanity of people and the magnificence and the miraculous nature of just being here and being alive. And what I see is like, oh, we've just forgotten that. We've forgotten that we didn't get the memo yet. And like, I'm here to be a person that maybe just gives you the invitation to think about that today, and to just shift even by a few micro degrees in the direction of more self-compassion and more care, because you are so deserving of all of the love that you give to other people. If you think that you love so big, just understand. Just said this to a client before we wrap. This feels so important to say. The law of reciprocity states that you cannot give and not receive at the exact same time. Okay, so to receive is to give, and to give is to receive. They're plugged into each other. They're intimately connected. They will never be separate. Now I want you to think about how much love you give. You are worthy of receiving the same amount back. The question is, will you allow yourself to actually receive it?
Will you allow yourself to receive it? That is the question, right? Amber, we could talk forever. I'd love to finish with asking you to finish this sentence for me. I am.
Love.
You are indeed. You truly are such a huge heart, and it has been such a privilege to have this conversation with you. I love you beyond. You truly are just so special to me, and I'm so grateful that I get to call you a friend. Where can people find more information about you? I know you have programs, you have masterminds, you have the retreat coming up. Where can people find information about all of that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. You guys can head over to amberlilyestrom.com and just go on the website. Everything's there. I also love Instagram, and I'm over there every day. I love sharing just the behind the scenes of life and the musings and the silliness. And I'm at Amber Lilyestrom there as well. I also have a podcast called The Amber Lilyestrom Show that Sandra has been on. So you guys, hopefully we can link that episode into the show notes too, so you can listen to that one as well. And I'd love to connect with you all. And I hope that you guys will share this episode and tag both of us so we can love you right on back.
We would love to hear what your big takeaway was from today. Amber, I love you, my sister. So grateful for you. Thank you for your time today.
I love you too. Thank you, Sandra.